Priscilla Presley, often seen as a key figure in the world of Elvis Presley, is back to share some intriguing stories and revelations. In this video, she opens up about her relationship with the king of rock and roll, diving into what really happened behind the scenes with Elvis and their iconic home, Graceland. If Elvis were here, he'd say, "Thank you very much for subscribing. Are you a real fan? Let's find out." Elvis Presley's meteoric rise to fame was nothing short of extraordinary. By the time he was drafted into the Army in 1958, he had already transformed from a small-town boy into an international superstar. The world adored him, and yet, amid the flashing lights of fame, a more personal journey was beginning, one that would forever change his life. It was during his military service in Germany that Elvis met a young Priscilla Presley, a beautiful, dark-haired 14-year-old with a quiet, mysterious allure that caught the eye of the king. Their age gap, Elvis being 10 years older, was a topic of concern, but it was their magnetic connection that drew them closer. Despite the fact that Priscilla was still a teenager and Elvis was at the peak of his fame, they began a deep, passionate relationship that defied the odds. For Elvis, it seemed to be more than just a casual fling. He became captivated by Priscilla's innocence and beauty. For Priscilla, this was a dream come true. She was in love with the man she had admired from afar, and he had swept her off her feet. In 1963, after much insistence from Elvis, Priscilla moved to Memphis, where their relationship flourished. They lived in Graceland, his iconic mansion, where the couple's intimate bond grew deeper. Their life together was a mix of glamour and seclusion, as Elvis's fame kept them largely isolated from the outside world. On May 1st, 1967, in a ceremony that was witnessed by only a handful of close friends and family, Elvis Presley married Priscilla Presley. The wedding was modest by celebrity standards, yet still a celebration of their love. A love that, at the time, seemed to promise eternal happiness. At this point, many thought they were the perfect couple, the epitome of rock and roll royalty. But little did anyone know, the very things that brought them together would eventually pull them apart. Their marriage, however, would prove to be more complicated than they had anticipated. As Elvis's fame skyrocketed, so did the pressures of maintaining a relationship under the constant glare of the public eye. Although their bond had started out as a whirlwind romance, fame and all the complexities that came with it was starting to take its toll on the marriage. Even as they continued to enjoy lavish holidays and glamorous parties, the cracks in their relationship were beginning to show. It was only a matter of time before those cracks would deepen into an irreparable split. Despite the outward appearance of a glamorous fairy tale romance, the pressures that came with Elvis Presley's fame slowly eroded the foundation of his marriage to Priscilla. Behind the curtains of Graceland, the reality of their life together was far from idyllic. One of the first major strains on the marriage was Elvis's infidelity. From the very beginning, the king of rock and roll's charismatic nature and intense fame attracted many admirers, especially women. In the early years of their marriage, Priscilla tried to be understanding. She knew that Elvis was constantly surrounded by fans and other women who threw themselves at him. She also knew that Elvis had never been particularly good at being faithful, even before their marriage. But she had hoped that once they were together, things would settle down and their relationship would become more secure. However, as Elvis's fame continued to grow, so did his attraction to other women. Priscilla, while she never made her frustrations public, became deeply aware of Elvis's affairs. She tried to remain loyal not only to him but to the family they were building together, including their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, who was born in 1968. But despite her efforts, the emotional distance between them began to grow. Priscilla's own emotional needs went unmet for long stretches of time. While Elvis was off touring or working on his movie projects, Priscilla found herself increasingly lonely. The weight of his constant infidelities, coupled with his obsession with his career and social life, left her feeling isolated. In the early 1970s, Priscilla found herself drawn into an affair with Mike Stone, a karate instructor who worked closely with Elvis. The affair, while brief, was significant in its impact on the marriage. It marked a pivotal turning point that irrevocably changed the dynamics between the couple. Priscilla's affair was not just a response to the emotional neglect she felt, it was a breaking point. When Elvis found out about Priscilla's affair, his reaction was a mixture of disbelief and anger. At first, he seemed to be more hurt than enraged. The shock of her betrayal was a blow that forced him to confront the deeper issues within their marriage, issues that had been bubbling under the surface for years. Elvis, despite all his fame and accomplishments, seemed to struggle with how to process his feelings of abandonment and betrayal. He had, in a way, come to expect that the women around him would fall into his orbit, but when it was Priscilla, his wife, it felt like the ultimate act of rejection. In the aftermath of Priscilla's affair, Elvis found himself torn between love and hurt. He seemed to retreat into himself, withdrawing from the world, including Priscilla. This marked the beginning of their physical separation. Though they continued to live under the same roof, the emotional distance between them became painfully apparent. The marriage, once filled with passion and connection, now felt like a fragile shell of what it had been. Both Elvis and Priscilla knew that the marriage was slipping away, and neither seemed able to stop it. Despite this, the couple tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for the sake of their daughter, Lisa Marie. Elvis, despite his emotional turmoil, continued to support his family financially and remained involved in Lisa Marie's life. However, the cracks in their relationship were now undeniable. A permanent separation seemed inevitable. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, was one of the few people who had a clear and candid view of his son's personal struggles. For years, he had watched his son's meteoric rise to fame, and as Elvis's career flourished, so did the weight of the challenges he faced in his personal life. In their final conversations before his death, Vernon revealed his own perspective on why Elvis's marriage to Priscilla ultimately ended. According to Vernon, the root cause of the divorce wasn't just infidelity or Priscilla's affair. The real issue, he believed, was Elvis's inability to fully embrace the concept of commitment, both in his marriage and in his life. Vernon pointed to Elvis's restless nature, his constant yearning for excitement, novelty, and the thrill of the spotlight. This need for constant stimulation, he argued, was at odds with the stability that marriage required. Elvis, despite his deep love for Priscilla, was not someone who could easily settle into the routine of family life. His fame and the accompanying pressures created an environment where domestic life felt stifling to him. Elvis was always seeking something more, something bigger, Vernon said. The fame, the power, the attention, it was like a drug for him. He didn't know how to stop, how to just be. Vernon noted that Elvis's celebrity status played a significant role in the emotional turmoil he faced. The constant media attention, the screaming fans, and the endless demands of his career created an unrelenting cycle that left little room for introspection or peace. The public image of Elvis, the rock star who had it all, masked the deep loneliness he often felt behind the scenes. Vernon also pointed out that Elvis struggled with the pressures of being an idol to millions, but only feeling truly understood by a select few. Vernon further speculated that Elvis's dependence on prescription drugs, which had begun to escalate in the early 1970s, was exacerbating the issues within his marriage. The drugs, which Elvis used to cope with the demands of his lifestyle and his emotional pain, only served to deepen his sense of isolation and make him less present with Priscilla. At times, Vernon believed that Elvis's drug use distorted his perception of reality, making it harder for him to understand the full impact of his actions on those closest to him. From Vernon's perspective, the marriage between Elvis and Priscilla had been doomed from the start due to these fundamental differences. He understood that Elvis loved Priscilla, but he also saw the internal conflict within his son. Elvis's emotional needs were never fully met by anyone, including Priscilla, and this left both of them feeling hollow in different ways. Ultimately, Vernon saw the divorce as an inevitable outcome of a union that had been shaped by forces far beyond their control: fame, addiction, and an insatiable longing for something that was always just out of reach. By 1973, the cracks in Elvis and Priscilla's marriage had grown so wide that there was little left to salvage. They officially separated, and soon after they filed for divorce. The decision, though heartbreaking, came as no surprise to those who had been close to the couple. The emotional distance that had been building for years was finally too much to overcome. The formal divorce settlement was a significant financial transaction, but it also outlined the arrangement for the shared custody of their daughter, Lisa Marie. Both Elvis and Priscilla were deeply committed to their daughter, and they agreed to an arrangement where they would both play active roles in her life. Elvis, despite his own tumultuous emotions, remained involved in Lisa Marie's upbringing, and Priscilla made sure she was always there to guide their daughter through the complexities of growing up in the spotlight. In the aftermath of the divorce, the public was quick to judge, but behind the scenes, Elvis and Priscilla remained cordial. In fact, the divorce did not mark the end of their emotional connection. Instead, it marked a new chapter of mutual respect. respect. They still cared deeply for each other, and this was evident in the way they interacted after the separation. One of the most touching moments post-divorce was Elvis's performance of "I Will Always Love You" during one of his concerts. The song, written by Dolly Parton, became a heartfelt tribute to Priscilla, a reflection of the enduring love they shared despite their personal struggles. Elvis's raw emotion as he sang the song left no doubt that, although their marriage had ended, his love and respect for Priscilla had not. Though they were no longer married, Elvis and Priscilla continued to be a team when it came to their daughter. They were still united in their desire to see Lisa Marie thrive, and their friendship, albeit complicated, remained a source of stability in an otherwise unstable time for both of them. Their ability to put aside their differences for the sake of their daughter became one of the most enduring aspects of their relationship after the divorce. Even in the years following the divorce, Elvis and Priscilla found ways to support one another. They remained close friends, often meeting privately to discuss family matters, and they shared the occasional laugh over memories from their time together. It was a testament to the depth of their bond. Though the romance had faded, the friendship had not. As much as their marriage had been marked by turbulence, Elvis and Priscilla's post-divorce relationship revealed an undeniable truth. Love, in its many forms, endures. When Elvis and Priscilla finally divorced in 1973, the end of their marriage was not as much of a shock to those closest to them as it was to the general public. The tumultuous years leading up to their separation had already set the stage for this moment. By the time they had filed for divorce, the cracks in their relationship had deepened beyond repair, and both of them seemed to understand that their personal happiness could no longer be found within the confines of their marriage. The formal divorce proceedings were rather straightforward, and Priscilla received a substantial financial settlement, including spousal and child support. Though the financial terms of the divorce were carefully negotiated, the most important arrangement made between the two was the custody of their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. Both Elvis and Priscilla were determined to maintain a meaningful presence in their daughter's life, despite the emotional pain they were each experiencing. While Elvis spent his time performing and working on various projects, Priscilla focused on raising Lisa Marie, trying her best to shield her from the turmoil that had engulfed their family. However, the legalities of the divorce didn't erase the deep emotional bond that still existed between Elvis and Priscilla. While they no longer shared the same home or the same bed, they continued to have an amicable relationship that was grounded in mutual respect and love for their daughter. In many ways, their divorce marked the beginning of a new phase of their connection. It was no longer based on the romantic love that had initially brought them together, but rather on an understanding that, despite their differences, they would always remain family. Elvis's emotional state post-divorce was deeply conflicted. On the one hand, he had always loved Priscilla, and their shared memories were not easily forgotten. On the other hand, Elvis had always been a man who struggled with his emotions, especially when it came to the end of a relationship as significant as the one he had with Priscilla. He was often seen at his shows with a kind of melancholy that contrasted with his usual stage presence. Despite his fame and adoration from fans around the world, the sense of personal loss he felt was profound. For Priscilla, the aftermath of the divorce was equally difficult, but her approach to coping with the situation was more pragmatic. She focused her energy on being a mother to Lisa Marie and kept a low profile, trying to stay out of the public eye. She made it clear that she still cared for Elvis, but she also knew that the most important thing was to create a stable, nurturing environment for their daughter. Over time, Priscilla would emerge as a stronger, more self-assured woman, and she would eventually play a key role in preserving Elvis's legacy after his death. Despite the end of their marriage, Elvis and Priscilla's relationship continued to evolve. They kept in touch, especially when it came to their daughter. Over the years, their interactions became less about unresolved pain and more about a shared history and a mutual respect for one another. They had a bond that transcended their failed marriage, and that was something neither of them could ever deny. In the years that followed their divorce, Elvis's life continued to spiral into chaos. His career, while still successful, began to show signs of wear and tear. His drug addiction worsened, and he became more erratic in his personal and professional life. Yet, despite his personal struggles, Priscilla never stopped caring for him. She continued to keep a watchful eye on his well-being, and she made it a point to be there when he needed her the most. It was a delicate balance, as Priscilla still harbored a love for Elvis, but she also had to protect herself and their daughter from the destructive forces that surrounded him. During this time, Priscilla took on a more prominent role in managing Elvis's affairs. She became an important figure in his life once more, not as his wife, but as a trusted confidant and advisor. Priscilla's involvement in Elvis's career and personal matters helped him stay grounded in ways that few others could. She helped manage his finances, his personal relationships, and even his business dealings to some extent. It was a unique partnership, one that showed how even after their marriage had ended, they still relied on each other. Elvis's deteriorating health and his ongoing struggles with substance abuse weighed heavily on both Priscilla and those closest to him. Yet despite the tension and worry surrounding his life, there were still moments when Priscilla could see glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with. She remembered the man who had been charming, brilliant, and kind, even if those moments were fleeting. In those rare moments, Priscilla found herself hoping that Elvis could overcome his demons and return to the person he once was.
Tragically, that never happened. Elvis Presley passed away on August 16, 1977 at the age of 42, leaving behind a legacy that was as complicated as his life had been. His death was sudden and it sent shockwaves through the world. Fans mourned the loss of the king, and those who had known him personally were left to grapple with their own feelings of grief and loss.
In the wake of Elvis's death, Priscilla became one of the most prominent figures in preserving his legacy. As the mother of his only child, Lisa Marie, and as his former wife, she took it upon herself to ensure that Elvis's memory would live on for generations to come. Priscilla played a crucial role in the management of Graceland, which became a major tourist attraction after Elvis's death. She worked tirelessly to maintain the property and to protect it from becoming a mere relic of the past. Graceland would go on to become a symbol of Elvis's legacy, and Priscilla was key to ensuring that it remained a place where fans could pay tribute to the man who had changed music history.
Priscilla also worked to ensure that Elvis's music continued to be celebrated and remembered. She oversaw the release of new albums, merchandise, and documentaries, always ensuring that the memory of Elvis Presley stayed alive in the hearts of his fans. Her commitment to preserving his legacy was unwavering, and she took great pride in knowing that her daughter Lisa Marie was carrying on his legacy in her own way. The relationship between Elvis and Priscilla Presley was never simple, but it was undeniably profound. They were a couple who had experienced the highest highs and the lowest lows, but through it all, they remained connected. Their love story, though short-lived as a marriage, was far from one of bitterness or regret. Instead, it was a testament to the complexities of human relationships and the ability to endure even after romantic love has faded.
In their later years after the divorce, Elvis and Priscilla found peace in their mutual respect for one another and their shared commitment to their daughter, Lisa Marie. The emotional bond between them never fully dissipated even after their separation. Their divorce did not mark the end of their connection, but rather a new chapter in their lives, one in which they became a family in a different way. They remained steadfastly united in their love for Lisa Marie, and that shared goal became the foundation of their post-divorce friendship. Even after Elvis's death, Priscilla continued to honor the relationship they had and the love they shared, despite the personal and public challenges that had torn them apart. She remained a protector of his legacy, working tirelessly to ensure that Elvis's contributions to music and culture would never be forgotten. Their story is one of deep love, painful loss, and ultimate reconciliation. Elvis and Priscilla were not just husband and wife, they were two individuals who had been through incredible emotional turmoil together, and through it all, they continued to care for each other. Their relationship was complicated, but it was also profound, marked by a lasting bond that neither time nor distance could break.
Elvis and Priscilla Presley's story is a reminder that love is not always easy, and it doesn't always follow the paths we expect it to. But sometimes love is about finding peace and understanding, even after the heartache. And in the case of Elvis and Priscilla, that love, though tested and torn apart by the weight of fame, infidelity, and personal struggles, remained enduring and true until the end of Elvis's life and beyond.
And they're thinking money, of course, and I understand that. But I'm thinking entirely different. You know, this was a home, a beautiful home, and it was never going to happen. It was never going to be sold, ever, ever.
What if we told you that one of the most iconic estates in America, Graceland, almost slipped through the hands of its rightful heir, and that behind it all was a shocking power struggle involving none other than Priscilla Presley?
In a twist no one saw coming, Priscilla Presley attempted to claim control of Graceland, despite Elvis Presley's clear wishes. But how did it all go down, and what was the true reason behind her bold move? Graceland is more than just a house. It's a symbol of rock and roll history, a pilgrimage for fans of Elvis Presley. But did you know that after Elvis's death, his estate became the subject of a fierce battle?
When Elvis Presley tragically passed away in 1977, the future of Graceland was meant to be in the hands of his only daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. But there was one problem. Priscilla Presley had a plan of her own. After Elvis' death, Priscilla stepped into the role of executor of the estate, alongside other family members and advisors. However, Priscilla's control over Graceland wasn't just about running the estate, it was about something far bigger.
Priscilla had an undeniable vision for Elvis's legacy, but it wasn't as simple as just keeping the property. She wanted control over the profits, the estate, and most shockingly, Graceland itself. In the early 80s, when Lisa Marie was still a minor, Priscilla became the gatekeeper of Graceland. But as Lisa Marie grew older, tensions started to rise. Was Priscilla overstepping her boundaries? Was she trying to rewrite Elvis's legacy for her own benefit? While Priscilla certainly had good intentions for maintaining Graceland's place in history, she also knew that securing the estate's future meant securing power. But here's the shocking twist. Elvis Presley had made his wishes clear before his death. He wanted his daughter, Lisa Marie, to inherit everything. No one, not even Priscilla, was supposed to have control over Graceland for long. Despite this, Priscilla made her bold move, taking steps to ensure that she stayed deeply involved in the Presley estate, even after Lisa Marie came of age. As tensions boiled over, Priscilla eventually faced backlash. How far was she willing to go? What would it cost Lisa Marie to take full control of her father's estate? Graceland is not just a house, it's an emblem of Elvis Presley's unmatched impact on music and culture. Nestled in Memphis, Tennessee, it's a place where fans from around the world visit to pay homage to one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. The house is not just a home, it's an iconic landmark known for its extravagant decor and its connection to the man who revolutionized the music industry.
But when Elvis passed away in 1977, it wasn't just his music that left a lasting legacy. It was Graceland and the enormous wealth and assets tied to it. The estate would become one of the most significant symbols of his enduring influence. However, controlling Graceland and its massive estate wasn't as simple as just inheriting a property. It would spark a battle that no one saw coming, with Priscilla Presley at the center of it all. Priscilla Presley, Elvis's ex-wife and the mother of his only child, Lisa Marie Presley, found herself in an unexpected role after Elvis's death. She became not just a widow, but the executor of the estate. While she had been married to Elvis for years, their divorce in 1973 left her with certain rights and obligations, one of which was ensuring that their daughter, Lisa Marie, would inherit her father's fortune. But despite her ex-husband's passing, Priscilla was still deeply connected to Graceland in more ways than one.
While the Presley family would have their fair share of difficulties in the years to come, one fact remained clear. The control of Graceland and the wealth associated with it was a highly contested issue. Priscilla's involvement in the estate's affairs grew even stronger in the years following Elvis's death, especially as Lisa Marie was still a child and legally unable to take control of such a significant inheritance.
Elvis's will, which had clearly stated that Lisa Marie would inherit his estate upon turning 25, had not taken into account the complexities of the estate itself. Priscilla, in the meantime, took charge of the property, becoming the person responsible for making important decisions. Yet her role was not just as a caretaker of Elvis's legacy, it was about controlling the financial future of Graceland. The stage was set for the power struggle that would take years to unfold. With Graceland being both a property and a brand, Priscilla knew the key to preserving Elvis's legacy was also in controlling it financially. However, there were bound to be conflicts about who had the right to make those decisions.
As the years passed, tensions began to rise between Priscilla Presley and her daughter Lisa Marie Presley. Although Priscilla was committed to ensuring that Lisa Marie would inherit the estate, it wasn't clear who would hold the reins of Graceland until Lisa Marie was of age. In the 1980s, when Lisa Marie reached her teens, Priscilla still held significant control over Elvis's estate. But this did not sit well with some, and it led to a growing rift between mother and daughter. Despite the fact that Lisa Marie was the sole heir, she could not yet make the crucial decisions for Graceland until she came of legal age. Priscilla had a vision for Graceland's future that included ensuring it became a profitable tourist attraction and a legacy of Elvis's status as an entertainment icon.
But in the process, Priscilla's influence over the Presley estate became more about financial gain than the preservation of Elvis's personal history. By the time Lisa Marie reached adulthood, she found herself in a difficult position. Priscilla had established herself as the ultimate gatekeeper of Graceland, but Lisa Marie was legally the rightful heir. Yet Priscilla had worked tirelessly to maintain control over the estate during the years of Lisa Marie's childhood. While Priscilla may have been acting in the best interests of her daughter, the situation was further complicated by financial interests, public perceptions, and the pressure of keeping Elvis's legacy alive for future generations. Graceland, in many ways, had evolved into a business venture, one that brought in millions in tourism and product licensing. And Priscilla knew the only way to keep that success alive was to maintain her position at the helm. But at what cost? As Lisa Marie struggled to assert her control, the growing tension between the two women revealed the hidden complexities of family loyalty, ownership, and legacy. Would Priscilla's insistence on maintaining control lead to a rupture in her relationship with Lisa Marie? And could Lisa Marie ever truly take full control of Graceland, or would her mother continue to hold the keys to the estate, both literally and figuratively? The battle for Graceland had just begun, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have anticipated. In the end, Priscilla's attempt to control Graceland was a story of family loyalty, financial power, and the complicated dynamics of a family that lived in the shadow of Elvis Presley's legendary status. By the time Lisa Marie Presley was nearing adulthood, the power dynamic surrounding Graceland had already been set into motion. Priscilla Presley, now firmly in control of the estate, knew that securing the financial future of Graceland was paramount. But the question remained, would she let go of the reins once Lisa Marie was of age, or would she continue to assert herself as the estate's leader? Priscilla understood something that few others fully grasped. Graceland wasn't just a mansion. It was a brand, a living, breathing symbol of Elvis Presley's legacy that had to be managed with incredible precision. While the public viewed it as a tribute to Elvis, Priscilla knew its true potential. It wasn't merely a place where fans came to mourn, it was a multi-million-dollar empire, a tourist destination, and a way to continue earning from Elvis's likeness, music, and merchandise for decades to come. As Elvis's ex-wife, Priscilla was uniquely positioned to oversee the estate. She knew better than anyone that preserving the estate's financial worth was just as important as protecting the physical house. She saw potential for Graceland to evolve into a global attraction. Not only was Graceland a tribute to Elvis's life and work, but it could also become a museum, a living piece of history for fans to relive Elvis's rise to fame. But what Priscilla didn't anticipate was how complicated this vision would become. Priscilla became more than just a caretaker. She became the figurehead for the estate, signing deals, making business moves, and handling Graceland's complex finances. She became the public face of Elvis's legacy, and many began to see her as the key figure behind the success of Graceland. However, the deeper Priscilla became involved, the more she would face criticism, especially when it came to the delicate issue of inheritance. Lisa Marie Presley, her daughter, was growing up and would soon come into her inheritance. Priscilla had for years kept Graceland in her grasp, but would she be able to step aside when the time came? Would she willingly give up her control over the estate, or would the lure of keeping the empire intact prove too great to ignore? The situation was made even more complicated by the fact that Priscilla had to balance her own interests with what she believed was best for Lisa Marie. It wasn't a decision that Priscilla took lightly, and in the years that followed, she worked tirelessly to secure Graceland's future in a way that would benefit both her and her daughter. But the question remained, could she really give up control, or would she attempt to secure her role in Graceland's future at any cost? While Priscilla worked diligently to make Graceland a profitable, sustainable venture, Elvis Presley's last will and testament remained a central piece of the puzzle. Elvis, ever the private man, had made it clear that he wanted his daughter, Lisa Marie, to inherit everything upon reaching the age of 25. He specifically wanted her to have full control over the estate, including Graceland. The only issue? Elvis had never anticipated how complicated his inheritance would become. Priscilla knew her ex-husband's wishes well. Elvis had written the will with a clear vision for his daughter's future, but Priscilla also understood the practical challenges involved. Lisa Marie was still a child at the time of his death, and there were no immediate plans for her to take the reign. So Priscilla stepped in as executor, a role she would hold for several years. In doing so, she made decisions on behalf of the estate and, by extension, on behalf of her daughter, whom she felt had yet to fully grasp the weight of the responsibility. The problem, however, was that Elvis had created a blueprint for his estate, but it was based on assumptions that no one could have predicted. Lisa Marie, while the heir to everything, was not yet in a position to understand the business decisions involved in running such a large legacy. Therefore, Priscilla, as her mother and the caretaker of the estate, took it upon herself to safeguard both Lisa Marie's inheritance and the future of Graceland. But there was a conflict. Elvis's will stipulated that Lisa Marie was to inherit Graceland and all its associated wealth upon reaching 25. But it wasn't clear what would happen in the years leading up to that point. Would Priscilla, who had been instrumental in managing Graceland, be allowed to continue to hold a dominant role in the estate? Or would she be forced to give up control once Lisa Marie was legally able to take it over? Elvis's final wishes created a complicated roadmap for the future. Lisa Marie, while entitled to the estate, was still a young woman and not prepared for the enormous responsibility that came with it. Priscilla knew this firsthand, and she had the experience and vision to steer the ship. But it didn't mean that Priscilla could simply bypass her daughter's inheritance rights. As the years went on, the battle between Priscilla's desire to maintain control and Lisa Marie's rights as the rightful heir became more evident. Would Priscilla's love for Elvis and her daughter allow her to let go when the time came? Or would the power and control over Graceland be too much for her to relinquish? By the time Lisa Marie turned 25 in 1993, the situation surrounding Graceland had reached a boiling point. Priscilla had spent over a decade handling the affairs of the estate, making decisions for the future, and ensuring that Graceland remained financially successful. But now, the time had come for Lisa Marie to take her place as the rightful owner of the estate. Despite her age, Lisa Marie was not completely prepared for the responsibility that came with managing the Presley legacy. While she had grown up surrounded by the riches and fame that came with being Elvis Presley's daughter, she was still a young woman with little experience in the complexities of managing a massive estate like Graceland. Yet the pressure was undeniable. Lisa Marie had the right to control Graceland, but it was clear that Priscilla was not ready to give up her position. The tension between mother and daughter only escalated. Priscilla, who had worked so hard to build Graceland into the successful business it had become, had no intention of stepping aside easily. She had established herself as the face of Graceland, a brand that was now recognized all over the world. She had secured countless deals, maintained the upkeep of the mansion, and brought in millions of dollars through tourism and licensing agreements. To let go of Graceland, especially after all the work she had done, was not something Priscilla could do overnight. Lisa Marie, on the other hand, found herself caught in the middle of a conflict she wasn't prepared for. She had spent her childhood under Priscilla's guidance, but now, as an adult, she was expected to take charge. Yet how could she take control of something that Priscilla had built into an empire? How could she challenge the woman who had fought to protect her inheritance and secure the financial future of Graceland? The tension between the two women reached its peak as the realization set in that Priscilla might not simply step aside as Elvis's will had intended. Graceland had become more than just a family home. It was a financial powerhouse, and both Priscilla and Lisa Marie were now deeply invested in its future. But would Lisa Marie be able to reclaim what was rightfully hers, or would Priscilla remain in control for years to come? Despite the fact that Elvis had intended for his daughter to inherit everything, the family that had once been united by love and tragedy was now divided by power, money, and legacy. The battle for control of Graceland was no longer just about protecting Elvis's memory. It was about who would hold the keys to one of the most iconic properties in America and who would ultimately determine the future of the Presley Empire. As the years passed and Lisa Marie Presley settled into her role as the official owner of Graceland, the challenges for both her and her mother Priscilla were far from over. Priscilla, despite being well aware of the will's instructions, could not simply let go of the reins she had worked so hard to maintain. Even after Lisa Marie officially took ownership at the age of 25, Priscilla's position as a trusted advisor remained incredibly powerful. Priscilla's continued presence at Graceland wasn't just out of sentimental attachment. She had poured years of effort into ensuring that Elvis's estate thrived after his death, and in doing so, she had built herself a position of influence in the Presley legacy. The reality was that Graceland was not just a historical landmark, it was a business. It was a machine that required constant care and management, something that Priscilla had become uniquely skilled at. While Lisa Marie was technically the heir, Priscilla knew the weight of responsibility that came with managing Graceland and all of its financial complexities. There were contracts to sign, promotional deals to negotiate, and an empire to protect. Lisa Marie had to navigate the fine line between honoring her father's legacy and building her own path. For Priscilla, it was about ensuring that Elvis's memory remained intact, a fight she had committed to from the moment of his death. But the tension between mother and daughter remained undeniable. While Priscilla had always acted with Lisa Marie's best interests in mind, her strong-willed approach created feelings of distance and frustration. Lisa Marie had to find her own voice as the new head of the Presley estate, but it was clear that Priscilla wasn't ready to step back. She had the knowledge, the experience, and the control. Yet she also had the unwavering desire to maintain the Presley legacy in the way she believed Elvis would have wanted. The dynamics between them continued to shift as Lisa Marie, now an adult, fought to establish her own identity beyond being Elvis's daughter. This wasn't just a struggle for control of an estate, it was about defining her own role in her father's story, something that was harder than it appeared. The pressure of living up to Elvis's legendary status was enormous, and Lisa Marie felt it acutely. Would Priscilla ever let go of her position at the helm of Graceland? Despite the ongoing tension, Priscilla did gradually step back from her direct involvement. In time, Lisa Marie took on more responsibility, though the shadows of the past and Priscilla's presence were always lingering. The question of whether Priscilla truly relinquished control remained open, especially as Lisa Marie continued to navigate the complex legacy left by her father. The battle for control of Graceland was much more than a power struggle. It was a story of family, loyalty, and the lasting influence of Elvis Presley. Priscilla Presley's bold attempt to hold on to the estate was driven by love for her daughter, a desire to protect Elvis' memory, and a deep understanding of how important Graceland was to preserving Elvis's place in history. But in doing so, she often found herself at odds with Lisa Marie, who had every right to take control of the estate, as her father had intended. While Priscilla's actions may have been controversial, they were motivated by a powerful sense of responsibility. She was not simply a mother trying to hold on to her past, but a woman who saw herself as the guardian of Elvis's legacy, a legacy that had global significance and untold financial potential. For Priscilla, keeping Graceland alive and thriving was the most important task, and she would go to great lengths to ensure that it continued to honor Elvis, even if that meant staying involved longer than expected. Lisa Marie, on the other hand, struggled with the weight of being Elvis Presley's daughter. She faced the daunting task of not only inheriting her father's estate, but also finding her own way in the world while maintaining the legacy he had left behind. The pressure was immense, and with Priscilla's continuing influence, it took time for Lisa Marie to fully take ownership of Graceland and its future. Ultimately, the question of who truly holds the keys to Graceland is one of legacy, power, and family dynamic. Priscilla Presley, who fought so hard to protect the estate, could not keep control forever. Yet her influence on the Presley legacy is undeniable. Lisa Marie, now fully in charge, carries on her father's legacy while navigating the complexities of running one of the most famous estates in the world. The battle may have been fierce, but the Presley legacy remains intact. Graceland continues to stand as a testament to Elvis's extraordinary life and influence. And as Lisa Marie Presley now leads the estate, there's no doubt that the story of Graceland and its iconic status will continue to evolve. What do you think about Priscilla Presley's attempt to control Graceland? Was she just trying to protect her daughter's future, or was there something deeper at play? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more unbelievable stories about iconic figures and family legacies that shaped history.
You know, privileged children are,
And Elvis wanted her to have everything.
because he didn't really know. He too grew up very, very poor.
Yeah, Poe.
And it's exactly what he said the other day. Poe, right.
Poe.
And he said,
What if the king of rock and roll never really left the building? What if Elvis Presley didn't die in 1977, but instead faked his death to escape the crushing weight of fame? This isn't just a wild conspiracy theory, it's a claim backed by shocking evidence and the most unlikely of sources, Priscilla Presley herself. Could the man who defined an era still be alive today, living under a new identity? And if so, is he hiding in plain sight as a humble preacher? The answer might be closer than you think. Elvis Presley's death in 1977 sent shockwaves through the world. Fans wept, tributes flooded in, and the music world was forever altered. But over the decades, one question has loomed larger than all others. Did he really die? As bizarre as it may seem, many have wondered if the king staged his death, vanishing into the shadows to live a life of peace away from the relentless glare of the spotlight. Enter Bob Joyce, a pastor in Arkansas whose resemblance to Elvis is uncanny. Same deep voice, same unmistakable mannerisms, and most startling of all, he never seems to outright deny the theory that he's the real Elvis Presley. When asked about it, Joyce has remained strangely tight-lipped, often responding with vague, cryptic remarks that only fuel the fire of speculation. But the intrigue doesn't stop there. Priscilla Presley, Elvis's ex-wife, has made comments that have left many questioning what she knows. Her responses to questions about Elvis's death are often evasive, almost as if she's hinting at a much bigger truth. Could she be guarding a secret about the man who once ruled the world? The idea that Elvis faked his death isn't just the stuff of tabloid rumors. It's a theory that grows stronger every year, fueled by the ongoing mystery of Pastor Bob Joyce and the eerie silence of those closest to him. Could it be that Elvis was driven to escape the suffocating pressure of fame? The life of the king was filled with highs and lows, but the lows, constant scrutiny, endless tours, and the destruction of his personal life were enough to make anyone crave escape. Was faking his death the only way Elvis could regain control of his life? Was he desperate enough to abandon everything, including the music world that adored him, to lead a simple, peaceful life in the shadows? As the evidence begins to pile up, one thing becomes clear. The story of Elvis Presley may not be over. In fact, it may have just begun. When you think of Elvis Presley, what comes to mind? The slicked back hair, the sparkling jumpsuits, the tantalizing voice that captivated millions. Now imagine that same man, Elvis Presley, reappearing in a completely different guise, stripped of his fame and fortune, but still undeniably the same person. It sounds like a far-fetched fantasy, but if you take a closer look at the evidence, you might start to believe that the king never truly left the building. Bob Joyce, a pastor in a small town in Arkansas, has spent decades quietly ministering to his congregation, all the while drawing increasingly suspicious attention due to his striking resemblance to Elvis Presley. For years, Joyce has kept a low profile, never publicly acknowledging the whispers and theories surrounding his identity. But the similarities are too much to ignore. If you were to see Bob Joyce in person, you'd be hard-pressed to find any distinguishing features that would suggest he's not the same man who once ruled Graceland. Let's begin with the basics. Joyce's voice. It's unmistakable, deep, rich, and powerful, with that familiar drawl that made Elvis one of the most iconic voices in the history of music. Many who have heard Joyce speak for the first time remark that they feel like they've been transported back in time. His speech patterns mirror Elvis's almost exactly. Long pauses, the same rhythmic cadence, the subtle intonations that were signature to the king himself. But it's not just his voice that's eerily similar to Elvis's. It's his mannerisms as well. The way he moves, the subtle gestures, the charisma that exudes from him, everything about Bob Joyce screams Elvis. Even though he's been living a quiet, relatively unknown life in the years since his supposed death. Now, let's talk about Joyce's appearance. The man is, quite frankly, Elvis in disguise. When seen from a distance, you could almost convince yourself that you've spotted a ghost from the past. His facial features, particularly his eyes, nose, and mouth, carry an uncanny resemblance to Elvis. In fact, many fans and conspiracy theorists have pointed out that Joyce looks like a more aged version of the king, with graying hair and a slight weight gain, but still bearing the same bone structure, same unmistakable charm. The Elvis signature of slicked back hair, sharp jawline, and intense gaze are still there, unmistakable as ever. But what about his life? Why would Elvis Presley, the most famous man on earth, suddenly disappear and assume the identity of a small-town preacher? It seems almost impossible to fathom, especially considering the heights of fame Elvis achieved. And yet, this is where the theory begins to take shape.
According to some, Elvis was no longer able to handle the crushing pressures of being a worldwide sensation. The fame, the constant scrutiny, the media frenzy, it became too much. Rumors swirled for years that Elvis was tired of the spotlight and at the height of his fame began to contemplate a life away from the cameras.
The idea of a reclusive Elvis Presley isn't new. In fact, during the final years of his life, there were already whispers that Elvis was struggling with his health, his addictions, and his inability to find peace. Some claim that he faked his death in 1977 to escape these pressures, and in doing so, he created a new life for himself, a life of solitude, away from the public's prying eyes. And the man living in Arkansas preaching the Word of God could very well be that very person. As strange as it may seem, the evidence points to a deeper mystery. And what makes this theory even more intriguing is the eerie silence surrounding the people who should know the most about Elvis's life: his family, his closest friends, and his ex-wife Priscilla Presley. Priscilla's statements on the matter are perhaps the most chilling pieces of the puzzle. Over the years, she's made several cryptic comments that suggest she knows more than she lets on. In interviews, Priscilla has been careful with her words when asked about Elvis's death. She doesn't deny that he died in 1977, but there's always a lingering doubt in her responses, as if she's holding back a truth too explosive to reveal. Could she know that Elvis faked his death? Could she have been part of a grand plan to protect his secret and help him disappear into obscurity? Her hesitation to fully deny the rumors has only fueled the fire, leaving fans and skeptics alike wondering if there's a deeper truth at play. While the evidence may seem far-fetched to some, those who believe Elvis faked his death argue that all of these pieces align perfectly. Bob Joyce's similarities to Elvis are undeniable. His quiet life as a pastor away from the spotlight could very well be the new life Elvis craved. And Priscilla's odd responses leave room for speculation. Could it be that the king never left us? And could he still be living in plain sight, a mere shadow of his former self, watching as his legacy continues to thrive? The more you dig into the theory that Elvis Presley faked his death, the more it begins to make sense. Elvis was not just a musician, he was an international icon, a cultural phenomenon. His every move was watched, analyzed, and dissected by the media. His personal life became as much of a spectacle as his musical career. And while Elvis enjoyed the adoration of millions, there was always a darker side to his fame, one that grew heavier with each passing year.
In the early days of his career, Elvis was a fresh-faced star with an untamed energy that captivated audiences across the world. His rise to fame was meteoric and his popularity knew no bounds. But as the years went on, the pressures of living in the spotlight began to take a toll. Elvis, who had once been a wild, free-spirited performer, became increasingly reclusive and disillusioned. The same public who once adored him began to turn on him, criticizing his appearance, his weight, his lifestyle choices. His personal struggles with addiction and depression became public knowledge, and the constant barrage of negative press weighed heavily on him.
At the peak of his fame, Elvis was no longer the vibrant young man who had set the world on fire with his music. He was a shadow of himself, exhausted by the demands of stardom, the never-ending tours, and the invasion of his privacy. For someone as fiercely independent as Elvis, the idea of constantly being under the microscope must have been suffocating.
And then there was his family. Elvis's relationship with his ex-wife Priscilla was fraught with tension, and their divorce in 1973 only added to his emotional turmoil. Elvis's strained relationship with his daughter, Lisa Marie, also weighed on him heavily. His personal life was in shambles, and the man who had once ruled Graceland now seemed lost and uncertain of his place in the world. The idea that Elvis could have faked his death to escape this nightmare no longer seems as implausible as it once did.
What makes this theory even more compelling is the fact that Elvis was never known for his desire for money or fame. Unlike many other stars who seek to prolong their careers and bask in the limelight for as long as possible, Elvis had always been somewhat of an enigma. He wasn't interested in fame for fame's sake. He wanted peace. He wanted privacy. And after years of being trapped in the gilded cage of superstardom, it's entirely plausible that he chose to escape forever. In the years leading up to his death, Elvis had become a shell of his former self. He had gained weight, his health had deteriorated, and he seemed far removed from the electrifying performer who had once brought down the house. By 1977, he was exhausted, burned out, and ready to walk away from it all. And so the theory goes, Elvis decided to disappear. He faked his own death, leaving behind his fortune, his fame, and his public persona. In doing so, he gained something far more valuable: his privacy. By assuming the identity of Bob Joyce, Elvis could live a quiet, peaceful life far from the prying eyes of the media. He could preach, help others, and find the solace he so desperately sought. But what he didn't anticipate was how the world would continue to hold on to his legacy, constantly searching for answers, never quite willing to let go of the king. Could it be that Elvis is still with us, living in plain sight, hiding behind the name of a humble pastor? The evidence is there, and the more you dig, the more it begins to make sense. The king might never have truly left us. He might just be living a different life, in the shadows, waiting for the world to finally understand the truth.
For many fans, the idea of Elvis still being alive isn't just about a fascination with his music or his legacy. It's a hope that something as extraordinary as his life could continue in secret. There's something inherently comforting about the thought that a legend like Elvis could transcend death, becoming something more than just a figure in history. In this world where we often feel like legends fade and icons die, the possibility that Elvis Presley is still out there offers a strange kind of solace.
It's not hard to understand why people want to believe. Elvis was more than a singer. He was a cultural force, shaping music, fashion, and even social movements. He was an embodiment of rebellion, freedom, and charisma. He represented a time when anything seemed possible, and when the impossible became real. Elvis wasn't just a rock star, he was an icon who stood for something bigger. For millions of people, the idea that Elvis could still be around, still alive, still out there, still somehow defying time, feels like the ultimate testament to his greatness. This is where the theory begins to capture hearts. By suggesting that Elvis could have faked his death, it offers a sense of hope. Perhaps the king, burdened by the weight of fame and the madness that surrounded his life, simply chose to disappear. And if he did, it gives fans the tantalizing idea that he's still out there. Maybe watching, maybe smiling, maybe enjoying a life he always wanted but could never have while under the watchful eye of the public. Take, for example, the way people react when they see Bob Joyce speak or perform. Many fans who've attended Joyce's sermons have expressed shock at the similarities they notice. It's more than just his voice. There's a presence, a charisma, a mannerism that seems too familiar. One could chalk it up to coincidence, but for others, it's a direct link to Elvis himself. When you listen to Joyce sing, there's an uncanny resemblance to Elvis's vocal style. The deep, rich tones, the smoothness of his delivery, the way the lyrics flow. It's as though Elvis himself is still singing. Fans who were alive during the height of Elvis's career cannot help but hear echoes of the king in every note Bob Joyce sings. These fans, who have lived through the cultural revolution that Elvis ushered in, are not ready to let go. They've seen the footage of Elvis's last days, heard the stories, and know all too well the kind of toll fame takes on a person. The notion that Elvis faked his death resonates because it taps into their need for closure, their need for a hero who will never die, even if the world thinks he has. And the deeper you go into this mystery, the more you see that the theory provides a kind of spiritual answer. Elvis didn't just leave the public eye, he became a preacher. Some believe that after the chaos of his music career, he found peace in spreading spiritual messages and helping others. His decision to abandon the stage for a pulpit isn't just a retreat from fame, it's an act of redemption. The king, once a figurehead of excess and rebellion, could have chosen a path of humility and service. The man who once defined rock and roll might have wanted to help others find meaning in life beyond fame and fortune.
This line of thinking resonates with many fans who feel that Elvis's life and career were far more complex than the public ever realized. The idea that Elvis, weary of the world's demands, would retire to live in private, preaching a message of hope, only adds to his mystique. The king, instead of fading into oblivion, could have transitioned into a role that made him a guide for others. Still alive, still a source of inspiration, but no longer needing the adulation of millions.
And so the question becomes, not did Elvis fake his death, but what if he did? What if, by stepping away from the spotlight, Elvis achieved the peace he so desperately sought? The theory isn't just about conspiracy. It's about a love for a man who changed the world and a desire to believe that something as incredible as Elvis Presley's life could never truly end. To understand why the theory of Elvis faking his death resonates with so many, you have to first grasp the sheer magnitude of his legacy. Elvis Presley wasn't just a singer. He was a cultural touchstone, a symbol of rebellion, freedom, and creative genius. His impact on music, fashion, and the very idea of celebrity is immeasurable. But more than that, Elvis was a phenomenon, one that transcended time, place, and genre.
When Elvis first burst onto the scene in the mid-1950s, he completely revolutionized music. His rockabilly sound, combined with a provocative stage presence, shook the music world to its core. He was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. And then just when it seemed like he was unstoppable, he reinvented himself in the 1960s, moving into Hollywood films and solidifying his status as a pop culture icon. His image was everywhere, from the movie screens to the radio waves to the lives of the millions who adored him.
But the world he created for himself was not one without its challenges. The demands of fame were crushing. The constant media attention, the endless tours, the scrutiny of his every move. It was all too much. For someone as sensitive and private as Elvis, the spotlight wasn't a thrill. It was a prison. And it's within this prison that the seeds of the theory began to sprout. Perhaps in the face of everything, Elvis chose to disappear. It would make sense given the kind of person he was, a man of contradictions, a performer who couldn't escape the roles forced upon him, and a man who just wanted to live his life free of judgment. But even if Elvis did choose to step away from public life, it doesn't mean that his impact faded. It is, in fact, his legacy that makes this theory so compelling. Elvis never truly left the world. His music still plays on the radio, his films are still watched by millions, and his persona is as alive today as it ever was. Fans continue to flock to Graceland, pilgrimage sites for Elvis enthusiasts who cannot bear to let go of the king. And let's not forget the multitude of impersonators, tribute artists, and even casual fans who continue to emulate his style, his look, and his sound. Elvis is everywhere. That's what makes the theory of his fake death so poignant. Elvis never really left. The King of Rock never stopped being a part of the world. His music lives on in every generation, and his legacy is woven into the fabric of pop culture. He didn't have to fake his death to remain relevant. He already was. But imagine for a moment, what if Elvis did fake his death? What if he made the conscious choice to step away, to disappear, to live a life outside of the public's eyes, in the service of others, in the quiet of a preacher's pulpit? The theory elevates his life story to a whole new level of intrigue. It suggests that the king was not just a victim of fame, but a man who sought to transcend it, to be remembered for his music, not his notoriety. As the years go by, Elvis's influence only grows. New generations of fans discover his music and his story, while older fans continue to celebrate his legacy. The idea that Elvis faked his death doesn't diminish his greatness. If anything, it amplifies it, suggesting that he could walk away from the stage, disappear from the public eye, and still remain the most important figure in the history of rock and roll. His impact is timeless, and his legacy has become as enduring as the man himself. When you take a step back and examine everything, the eerie similarities between Bob Joyce and Elvis Presley, the cryptic statements from Priscilla Presley, and the fact that Elvis had the means and motive to disappear, you begin to see how the theory of Elvis faking his death could be true. It's not just a random collection of wild ideas. There's something in the evidence that feels undeniably real. Bob Joyce's mannerisms, voice, and appearance are too much of a coincidence to ignore. The idea that Elvis, known for his eccentricities, could have reinvented himself as a humble preacher is not as far-fetched as it might seem. Elvis was a man who constantly reinvented himself throughout his career. This would just be another chapter in his transformation. And the silence surrounding Bob Joyce's identity speaks volumes. If he were truly Elvis Presley, he wouldn't have to deny it. His life, his actions, and his choices could speak for themselves.
What's most compelling is how the evidence fits together. The uncanny resemblance to Elvis, the cryptic comments from Priscilla, the deliberate silence surrounding Bob Joyce's past, and the overall desire for privacy that Elvis clearly sought in his final years. If Elvis wanted to disappear, he certainly had the means to do so. And in choosing the life of a preacher, he could have achieved something far more profound than he ever did as a superstar. Now we turn it over to you. What do you think?
Could Elvis Presley really be alive today? Could the king have chosen to walk away from the stage and into a new life? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share your own theories. Whether you believe Elvis faked his death or think it's all just coincidence, your voice matters in keeping this story alive. Elvis may have left the stage, but his story is far from over. The mystery, the legacy, and the legend continue. Now it's your turn to be part of the conversation.